guys, so I'm just going to talk you through some Sashiko stitches, all the basics to get you through your kit. So you've got a beautiful design bag. So inside you'll find some patterns, some grid paper which we're going to use to practice some designs. You need to cut out this little bit of card. You've got some cotton, Sashiko thread and a sharp needle. You've also got a like chalk fabric pencil thing which will mark on fabric and easy to wipe off afterwards. And then you've got a navy blue tote bag. Okay, things in addition that you need to get is a pair of scissors. You'll need maybe a pencil, and then you'll need a ruler. If you don't have a ruler, then actually any straight edge will do because you've got the grid paper. And the reason we're doing this method is we want to avoid buying. There are some lovely templates available, but it's quite restrictive what you can do with a template. So this is quite a nice way of getting creative. And then also you can edit the size depending on the product that you want to do. So just so you can see it, I'm just going to do mine with a red pen. So I've cut out my template, I'm laying it on the grid, and then I'm trying to match up this line and this line to the grid. It doesn't massively matter actually at this stage, but later on it will be important. So I want you to do 2 down and 2 on the next row. And again, this is, you know, your first one, but there's no reason why you can get a little bit confident later and do a larger version of this. You can cut a different size circle or draw around something else, or even use a compass if you have one. Okay, and then I'm finding the middle, and then I'm just going to do a circle there. All right, so just like a little bit like a flower at the moment. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to add curves in the 4 corners. So how I can make sure that I get that right is obviously it's going to go from the middle of the circle to the middle of the circle there. So I just want to, that's why I've added these little blue marks to make it nice and easy for you to make sure you get it in the right position. But again, if you were doing it yourself and you wanted to do a different size, you could do something similar, or you could just measure the boxes. I've just done this to keep things nice and easy. So that's those 4 done. And then next, we want to make these here because we want those extra shapes. So this time you can use the whole half a circle. So you can just place that in the middle there. Make sure they all line up. Again, I'm being a bit rushed. I'm sure you could do it a little bit slower. But it is quite important with Japanese embroidery that everything is quite accurate, and it does look really beautiful later. So a little bit about Sashiko whilst I'm just finishing off here. It's been around a long time and it's often done on indigo fabric. It translates as little stabs, which is kind of what it is. But the process doesn't involve an embroidery hoop. And also it's about continuous lines. So where you may be tempted to sew your embroidery stitches here, and maybe then you would do this, then maybe you would do that. You wouldn't do that with Sashiko. You do long flowing lines. So for instance, if I started here, I would actually go all the way down and follow that line, okay? And then when I was coming back up, I would look at it and think about where would be, I don't want too much pull and I don't want to go off in weird directions and do short lines. I want to do as few short lines as possible. So then I'm going to come back maybe this way. Okay, so whilst I'm here, then maybe I would come round this arch and I would do exactly the same on the other side, and then I'd come back this way. At some point I have to do this one, and maybe when I've got a little bit of thread left I would do this. But in general I am able to do quite long lines, and I do want to try where possible to go back and forth. So hopefully that helps. And that helps then with it kind of pulling because you don't have that embroidery thread. So now I've done that, I'm going to get my bag and I'm going to translate that design somewhere on the bag. Okay, so I'm just going to go right here, just below the straps in the middle. But some people have done some lovely designs down in the corner, right in the middle, all sorts. It's totally up to you. So I would cut this out because this can actually act as your ruler. So that's why I was saying earlier, you don't actually need a ruler if you have some grid paper. If you need more grid paper, just type in 1 centimetre grid paper into Google, and just make sure that you have your settings on your printer so it isn't scaling the document. So make sure it's at 100%, and then you'll get perfect 1 centimetre grid paper that pops off. It doesn't seem that it's sold in the shops anymore, so you probably will need to print it. I did try and buy some, but it's easier to print, funnily enough. Okay, so I actually don't need every single line. I haven't actually used half of them. So I'm going to just mark off, make sure it's in the middle, the corners. Yeah. And then I'm going to mark off number 3, the 3rd centimetre. I'm going to mark off the 6 because I've used that one a couple of times. And then I'm going to mark off number 9. So 3, 6 and 9 and 12 centimetres. Same here. Same here. And same here. Okay, so that's my repeat of that grid. And then I'm going to use my ruler or my straight thing if you don't happen to have a ruler at home, and just join those lines together. I don't even know that I need the outside shape actually, although it is very tempting to put it in. So at the end I'll just go through a couple of other patterns. No, I don't really need it. And then I need my circle template again, which I seem to have lost, sorry. Messy puppy. Where did I put that? Ah, there, sorry. All right, and then I'm just going to copy it. So I'm going to go round the circle, repeat. So again, like I said, it's not 100% necessary to use the grid, especially when you're more confident, but definitely good for beginners to practice on some paper first. And then if you go through any pattern books or the ones that I've sent you, you'll see that there's just generally some simple logic to all of them, really. The more I've looked at them, sometimes they look quite complicated, but then you'll see like a little trick to them. I'll show you an example later, and suddenly you think, oh, actually that's really easy to do. It's great. It has a really nice feeling of doing a little bit of, simple maths, getting the brain working. And the other thing with Sashiko is that it's only ever a running stitch. So even if you Google and find some of the most amazing designs that have been done, when you actually look closely, you'll see that they've only ever used running stitch and just used them in different ways, different directions. They also traditionally don't knot at the end of the thread. Now, I've tried the method that they've said. It's basically where you weave in the ends. I don't really like it, so we're not going to be doing that. Feel free to investigate more and decide whether you want to do it or not. But I wasn't that blown away with doing it, and I didn't find it, that effective. But they use, like this I guess it has something to do with tension. But a knot also is pretty handy. So take about 1 metre of thread, okay, and then maybe lick the end so that you can insert the needle nice and easily, and then apply a small knot at the end. And then I obviously won't keep you for the whole sewing. I just want to show you maybe 2 or 3 top tips, and then you can carry on. And then I'll also give you a small amount of a different colour. And then if you have a little look at mine in a moment, you'll see that I've used the different colour for one of the lines to just add a little bit of accent to it. So that's this one here. So here, this one's just been done in red, and that just makes that stand out. So you might want to consider which line you want to highlight. Sorry, it's being a bit useless now. Right, let's get started. Okay, so you come in from the back, yeah, and come through. And I'm going to start start on this top left hand line. Okay, so I'm going to travel down here, down here, down here. Now, it is quite hard for the first couple of lines to get used to this. So you may want to do an extra line or do some little markings on it, just so you don't, I do find, because it's meant to be more of a continuous stitch, you're not meant to stop and start and do one, then one, then one. So you may want something, because I often find that, especially when I get in the zone, I find it a little bit hard to follow the line, and sometimes I go off in the wrong direction. But it looks so much nicer if you do keep to the most natural flowing lines. And then the stitch themselves, it's kind of, it's big stitches that are visible and then very small spaces in between. So in millimeters, I'd say that it's about 5 for the stitch and then maybe 2 for the space. So you're trying, but again, you'll find your size. But the one important thing, let me just get there. Well, there's 2. One is that you try and go as far as you can, and that will get those lovely flowing lines. So I'm just going to try and keep building up as many stitches as possible on my needle. But what I want to do is where they intersect, I don't want to, let me just show a little picture here. Okay, I don't want to overlap on the intersections. I want to, where possible, leave a space, and that looks much nicer. So it is quite hard to achieve that, especially at the beginning, because you'll be finding your stitch size. But can you see there? I've gone underneath, and actually I've gone a little bit bigger therefore than the normal 2 millimeters. Try to make it a bit smaller. And I'm just going to try and keep going. So that needle is still going. And I think I can do a couple more. It does get quite hard to hold. I think I better stop now. I think that's enough. And then I'm just going to pull all of those through. And it really does make a difference. It makes it look less kind of square and more like gradual. All right, and then I'll just go to the end and just then show you how I would turn around. And then I'm going to leave you to it then. But just before I go, well, that's a bad size there. I'm going to go small just to not cross that intersection. It's quite hard, that one. 1, 2, 3. It's always on video that it always goes a bit wrong. So yeah, no, it's a lovely craft, and I really like that you don't need to invest in templates. You can just look online. There's loads of lovely patterns available. And like I said, and if you look at them for a few minutes, I think most of them you'll be able to figure out, because they either involve a square grid or an isometric grid. So when you've had a little bit more practice, you could try some isometric grids. Now I'm going to be turning around now and coming back the other way. So it's important that I make sure that it's all nice and flat before I do that. And then I'm going to rotate my work so I'm more comfortable. And then this time I'm going to be following this line, and this line. And they are starting to go a little bit faint where I've been handling it. And it's totally fine to get your template and redraw them. It is quite important that you follow them quite accurately so that you're, the words. So you're making a nice line. All right, so then you just carry on, and as I said earlier, you're going down and then back in the other direction. That's the sort of effect that you're trying to achieve. When you've finished your thread, you just literally pop a knot at the back, and then you would carry on with a new thread. And like I said, at some point I would recommend that you add a colour, a highlight colour. So just think about what line it is that you want to do that to, and then maybe even do that quite soon so that you don't accidentally use it. So yeah, I would just carry on here. When I got to the corner, I'd probably go round, and then I'd come back down, and I'd keep going until I ran out of thread. So yeah, hopefully that'll help with that style. But before I go, I'm just going to run you through a couple of the other patterns that I've included as I think very good beginners patterns. And what I'd suggest is that you use your grid paper to plan them out before you jump into them. So let's have a little look what we've got here. So for instance, this one. All right, so I'll do it with the big pen just so you can see. So can you see it's like boxes, and again you would decide how big they are. Now this is quite a small grid, so I'm probably going to go quite a bit smaller and just do a 1 square box. Then I'm going to leave a space either side, and then I'm going to add another box. Let's try this. 1, 2, 1, 2. How many have they got there? And they've got halves. 1, 2. It goes to a half. 1, 2, and a half. 1, 2. Sorry, that's the wrong side. 2, and that side. Okay, and then the same distance above. So 2 above and a square. 2 above and a square. 2 and above and a square. And therefore another half. I'm being a bit useless tonight, sorry. All right, and then using a ruler is connecting those corners. So that to that, that to that, that to that, that to that. All right, and then if you had the boxes at the bottom as well, you'd be joining those. And again, like I said, much neater. And then when you were ready, when you were happy with the size of your design, so you'd need to think about what surface area you're trying to fill, then you would cut it out and again transfer all the dots that you needed and just start creating it again on your fabric. So that's that one. Let's have a little look on this scrap of paper. This one's really cool. This is one of the ones that looks really tricky, because if you look close up, it's hard to tell, like where's that, for instance, that point there. That's in the middle of nowhere. So how do I work that out? And that took me a few minutes to see that this is actually a diamond and this is actually a square. So again, I'd think about how big I wanted to do it and I would draw my shape. So let's pretend I want one that's 2, 4, 6. I'm going to go that size. 6 by 6. 2, 4, 6. 6. And 6. Okay, that's my square. Then I'm going to do my diamond. So to make that, that must be there. Is that right? Just check. Yeah. Okay. Now this is the tricky bit. Well, not tricky. So can you see the lines are just part of the shape. So again, I probably need a different colour pen just to show you. 2 seconds. I've got a blue one here. So the first line is coming up from the centre, and then it's going across, and then it's touching the next one. Okay. The next one is that part, and the line from the centre. The next one is the straight forward bit, just to the edge, the side, and then down to there. The next one is, it's hard to do this on telly, that one, isn't it? That one, oh, to there, yep, just to the edge, that one, and that one. The next one, 3 forward, 3 across, 2 down. The next one, forward, across, down. The next one, across, up and down. The next one, 2, 3, 2. Whew, that was quite stressful doing it on this. I haven't done that for a while. But then, yeah, when you did your stitches, you would try and do, I'd probably go, actually there's some pictures here, isn't there? They're doing them in their colourway, so actually trying to keep the patterns one by one. So you do one at a time, and again you would just transfer that pattern over to your fabric. And then the final one, I don't know why I've done it in this order, because this is the easiest of the 3 extra ones I've given you, and doesn't really require any instruction, because that's just literally doing, again, depending on what size you wanted, you would draw rectangles, long thin rectangles, and then you would intersect those with other rectangles. And that's super easy, but can look really nice because again, you can add a little bit of a different colour. Oh, I needed one extra to make that look right, but you know what I mean. And then you just sew them in little blocks. And again, the instructions there have got the numbers. They've made it a little bit more confusing than it needs to be really. It's basically talking about thread 1 would go here. So you'd go 1, 2, and then you'd actually keep doing that all the way along. Then with your next thread, you'd fill in all the gaps. It doesn't really matter if you don't do this exact order. Then the next thread would do these lines, and then the final thread would do these horizontals here. And again, just transfer those onto your bag and then carry on, and then you can use the excess thread to start sashikoing everything else in your house. All right, I hope that was helpful. It was a little bit rushed, but I think hopefully with a little bit of practice, you'll be totally fine and you'll be making beautiful bags in no time. All right, speak to you soon. Bye.